In the city of illusions where the dorks reside, with their trust funds and their daddy's pride, they play with power and they pull the strings, but they don't care about the chaos that it brings. They worship Moloch with their secret clubs. In the depths of their mansions, the high-rise hubs, conspiracy theories they keep spinning round, but they'll never know the truth that they found. Trust fund dorks and their Moloch worship, living in a world that's twisted and hip. They think they're in control, but they're just pawns in a game they can see. They're all just cards.
Can you believe that shit?
All right. Thank you so much. We are here with William Ramsey here on the It's Not What You Think podcast. And, William, I'm really interested and excited about reading the books that you've sent me. I've heard you on multiple podcasts, as far as being on Tinfoil Hat and other podcasts with Juan on Juan and stuff like that. And I love those guys, and they've really helped me understand, what's really going on. And, so if you could, please tell everyone just a little bit about yourself and your background and how you decided to, go down this occult, path of writing these books that you've written.
Well, I would say I just had a conventional education. I'm from Nebraska. I wasn't exposed to maybe esoteric ideas. And I just kind of had a conventional public school education, high school, public college, public law school. And I was in DC from 95 to 98 and was very naive it was really incredibly naive about how things really worked there. And then, I saw a lot of the bodies start piling up. A lot of deaths in DC don't even get reported. And so that made me question the news even more. The kind of not conventional, but the corporate news. And so I really had to kind of do my own research, and I really was starting an independent research. The internet was really at its infancy. And so I really kind of I remember reading Bill Cooper or listening to Bill Cooper, Alex Jones. This is right around 2000, 2001. Then 9/11 happened. So I became a 9/11 researcher. Maybe 2003 is when the scales fell from my eyes and I realized it wasn't what we were told. And so that is kind of like the skin shedding kind of thing, where you become a kind of a different person because you have to figure out what's real about the past history, because so much of the stuff that I was taught as real truth wasn't. And so it was during then I was listening to 9/11. I listened to as many documents, watch as many documentaries, listen to as many things about 9/11 and all the kind of great 9/11 researchers. There's some that aren't great. But during that time is when I kind of saw this overpreponderance of this number 11. And there was a guy named Captain May. He's unfortunately passed away. He was a member of the military who also kind of saw this overrepresentation of this numerology. I had no idea what it meant and what it referenced. But then it was just kind of watching in the common culture and watching people say it. I was like, oh, wow. So these guys are kind of communicating concepts through numerology. ideas, not just like numbers have power in themselves, but actually we're like referencing. Like I use this example all the time. You say John 3:16, people know what that, if Christians know what that means, right? So these numbers reference stuff. And so once I realized that, then I was like, well, who are these people? Who's using these numerology? Who thinks like this? I didn't think like that. I kind of had a Christian, I was raised Catholic, kind of a Christian background. So then it was like I had to go down another pathway of knowledge. Like, what is the esoteric knowledge? What is occultism? And led me back to Crowley. And so all these numbers in 9/11, which I have in the slides as well, kind of all reference very important precepts or concepts within Crowley. And you reached out to me. It's the 77, which I know a lot about. And I included a lot of my 77 research in my first book, which I published in 2010. The title of that is Prophet of Evil, Aleister Crowley, 9/11 and the New World Order. And we're still kind of going through that process, this New World Order process, this occultism and secret references and secret societies, secret agendas. And so that is kind of like, and I'm still like, I'm on my 5th book. I've made 5 documentaries. I'm still finding that we really are impacted in the culture and the politics and everything by a lot of these kind of secret groups or oligarchs that find themselves together and have their own agenda, which doesn't have the rest of us in their mind. They don't have our best wishes in their minds or whatever. They don't really care about us. I mean, just like Crowley wrote, like the average person is a cow, this kind of cattle or goyim kind of view of other people, like they're a separate, like we're separate from them. So that's really kind of like the long and short of it.
That's why I really, I refer to them as trust fund dorks, really, because, I think Sam's got, I've heard Sam say that first and I've really run with it. And I try to make it as normalized as possible that, it's not, I mean, you just walk around, Myers and you see everything's made in China and people think we're about to fight China. You know what I mean? It's all this, exoteric presentation, that they give us. And, it's so interesting once you become enlightened, you could say, to, the reality that this occult reality behind the scenes is what's really running the show. For me, honestly, I can't even really have regular conversation anymore because people are so indoctrinated. They'll be like, "Who are you voting for?" And that I'll be like, "Don't do it, but I can't help myself. You know what I mean? I'm like, that's all fake. They're both on the same team. Like, I just go off. You know what I mean? And what's a way that maybe is a more efficient way to combat that instead of always thinking that you're going to throw someone down this rabbit hole that they're not ready for?
It's a good question. I think it's a slow process. Like it was a slow process for me. Now I analyze events and news totally different than I did 10, 20 years ago. So I think that it's kind of like a personal thing. Like it's almost like a deprogramming. I mean, I think you're really hypno-programmed. A lot of people are. And it's this really scary thing through the television. It's a very mild kind of hypnosis, but you kind of have to talk them out like they're in the Moonies or Scientology. Because so much of what we're told about the history of the United States, JFK, moon landing, the assassinations, it's all lies. So it's hard for people to come out and come onto the other side of that, right?
Right. My friend who builds tanks, for the government, he's so funny. He got out of the vaccine by doing a religious exemption or some sort of, medical exemption to get out of it, something, and he's always posting, Joe Biden sucks, Trump is awesome, and he's so like, he's kind of awake in the sense of like, he knows that the government's messed up, but he totally believes that we still went to the moon because he saw it on the black and white television as a kid. He just can't let it go, and
it's
he's
hard.
like, I'm not going to let you ruin my childhood. And it's like, why are you getting so mad at me? Like,
Right.
I'm just telling you to look at, that's clearly fake,
That's the cold. That's the power of the cold thinking, right? It's really hard to make that leap into the moon landing was fake, because and I think it correlates to 9/11 actually, because they're just these huge staged acts that so many people had to get in line behind to facilitate and keep the lie going for that long, right? So it's hard for people to actually think that a huge group of people would come together to make this huge, lie and perpetuate it to the present. It's really incredible.
And I think, where you said, everything's kind of correlated, to 9/11. I think it's, if you track the numbers and you track everything since Crowley, um, it's all correlated, and they make it that way. And whether the numbers are real or not, they gotta insert them into the narrative. And is that this is the way I look at it, William, when it comes to 77, and after tracking so many, it's either they insert it into the narrative because they believe it'll ensure the success of their ritual, or the numbers are real. And at that point, I think it has to be supernatural, because, there's no way that this type of coordination over so many crazy things, is capable by humans. But there's so much construction going on with 77 and things, I tend to think that, it's more them inserting it into the narrative to ensure the success of their ritual. What do you think?
Yeah, I think so. I think that they have a magical worldview. I think that that's pretty much established, that they're not really Christians in the in normal sense. They believe in affecting change through everything, and they have this kind of full spectrum dominance. I think that they really do are closer maybe to wizards than people think. So I think that that's the numerology. That's the important. It's also a signaling function, like I'm this person, this is who I am. And other people who know the kind of secret doctrines or have been initiated, like Crowley said, Satan is the Lord of initiation. So a lot of people have gone through initiations and they keep secret, but they can comprehend things like 9/11. There are people who've been initiated or who are Crowley fans who knew right away it was not what they were telling the public, right? Just through the numerology, understanding the 11 and the date and all that stuff. So I
Right. Yeah.
think that
They knew right away.
absolutely. So I think that that's a part of it too, is kind of like signaling, like a cult is like Masons always use 33 or something like that, and or
Right.
certain words or certain things. It's what's between these bricks that's important, So the brick and mortar Mason concepts, like that's what Obama did when he was elected in 2008. He kept making the same phrase, but it's what's in between these stones that's important. So the average person would be like, oh wow, he's really just appreciating architecture. But a Mason's like, that's our guy, right? He's one of us.
And I mean, if I had this epiphany and once I started realizing this coordinate thing, for example, the coordinates of Guyana was 7.7, right? Where Jim Jones did his
Oh, right.
thing. So I all of a sudden I was thinking, wait a minute, if the fallen angels fell on Mount Hermon, what are the coordinates there? And I just had a hunch. I hadn't seen any videos or anyone say this, on my own synchronicity. And you go and you Google Earth it, and it's right on 33 degrees. Do you think maybe this is, another reason why, Freemasonry is, the elite, the trust fund dorks, whatever secret society, and they're initiated into, they're obsessed with this, 33 number as well? Because maybe this is like, here's my theory. And you touched on Satan as well. And sorry, I'm trying to write this stuff down so I don't lose my train of thought. But isn't Satan just the adversary?
Yeah, yeah.
So
I
I
think that's what
mean,
it means. Yeah.
anytime I'm like fighting someone, essentially, like that's my adversary. I mean, that could be essentially my Satan. And if you watch the movie The Pope's Exorcist with Russell Crowe, he says, "Tell me your name, Satan." Right? He says, "Tell me your
Right.
name, Satan." And then he finds out later, after saying Jesus so much, that the name of the demon is Asmodeus, and he goes, "The king of hell." right? And so here's my theory, is that this 77 is a shout out to this lead fallen angel, this Semyaza, where maybe that could be connected to Awas or Lamb or some other entity. And then this 33 is worshiping the fallen angels as a whole, as a group, because that's where they all fell. And then that connects to 33 vertebrae, Jesus, all these other 33s that they insert, in this big collaboration.
Right. If you read Prophet of Evil in this kind of, I do the numerological breakdown, but in Anton LaVey's Satanic Bible, there are 77 names of Satan. So it's a direct reference to whatever entity, whatever name you call them. I mean, I think that, and maybe that
Right.
is Legion of Hell or something like that. It's definitely in there in the Satanic Bible. 77 is important to them. So it's important to LaVey and Satanism, not just Crowley.
Right. Interesting. And I did see that in my research that Anton LaVey did have 77 infernal names, is what
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's
is what it said. So yeah, that's another way of saying it, is that 77 names for the adversary, I guess you could say. But I
think
think that
Asmodeus is on that list too, or something. Or yeah, there's.
I think what happens is that they get us thinking about this Satan, which is kind of a generic, category, and they get us thinking about this devil, and they get everyone distracted away from the fallen angel story as much as possible in the Book of Enoch and everything that's about, because they don't want people knowing about giants and the fallen angel story at all. They want everyone to just read the King James version.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I think that there's other demons. I mean, I think even from Christian view, it's not just the devil. He has legions and servants and servitors and all this stuff.
Right.
So I
But
think,
I just mean by the devil is like just like a term. Like everyone thinks that this, I think that this is they've created these fake leaders so people don't really look who was the real leaders of the fallen angels, which in the Book of Enoch it tells you it's Semyaza and Azazel. And then you see these names, especially Azazel, through all of movies, right? I mean, Azazel is in like 40 movies, that I found. It's very interesting. And so, that's my theory, is that it's definitely some fallen angel shout out type thing that, is just being perpetrated continuously by these trust fund dorks who idolize Crowley and everything that he set forth for this generation of, these next few generations that came after him, right?
yeah, I think so. I think he was really writing to the elite. He was not really
Right.
he is famous. Kind of one of his famous lines is, have nothing to do with the muck of the mire, find the diamonds and polish them, right? So he didn't think of, like, he wanted to find the best and brightest and then influence them. And he didn't believe in egalitarianism or anything. He thought a feudal system was the optimal system, without shame, without any self-questioning. So that's really, he called himself the priest to the princes, right? So he was trying to find princelings and things like that, trust fund dorks, like you said, and influence them.
So here is this first slide that you have for us. Could you, just kind of like break this down? Like, I know this is book 77. And it, like I try to tell people, hey, this is the guy that's telling you, and then you see it through all of these events. What is this? What is this book 77 telling, telling us?
Well, Crowley broke down a lot of his treatises onto numerological tracks, and this one was important. 77, right? 7 times 11, right? So 11 is his kind of prime number. But this is called Liber, or book 77, or Liber Oz. So Oz breaks down, I think, in gematria 277, and you'll see this kind of strange insignia in the middle of the O, which is Crowley's mark of the beast. So it's actually fusing of solar and phallic symbolism, if you can kind of make that. But it's basically a moon. It's got the dot in the middle, 666. But he quotes from, it's 140 words. So that also has importance in gematria. But he quotes from his most important book called The Book of the Law, which he actually received 120 years ago, like last month, in Egypt. And so you see these Liber Al or Al quotes. And one of his primary statements is, do what thou wilt should be the whole of the law, 11 syllables and 11 words, right? So 11 again is that theme. Every man, woman is a star is a quote from the Book of the Law. And then there's no God but man, right? So it's basically a man is God. And the slave shall serve, right? So that whole theme of kind of feudalism or the elite rule by the elite. And then his signature, that's definitely his signature with the kind of phallic A. And basically it says you can do whatever you want if anybody thwarts those rights, number 5.
Oh, wow, I see it. God, this guy is such a pervert. I swear to God. I mean, if I could fight anybody, I would fight this guy, like, so bad. Like, I see what you're talking about, his phallic A right here.
Yeah.
Huh.
So, I mean, that's kind of his kind of sums up his outlook. He kind of in one simple, easily digestible one-page book, Liber 77.
I was watching this movie. It was with Michael Fassbender on Netflix, where he's a hitman. And in the very beginning, he's like, what was it that he said? Do what thou wilt is the whole of the law, or something like that. And then he goes, oh, anyways. And then he moves on. He's like, narrating himself, and he's quoting Crowley. And it's so interesting because, as soon as you become enlightened, it's in everything. It's all a shout out.
Yeah, you can see the references.
It's clear. It's clear as day, and you can't get away from it, even when you try.
But it's a very philosophical Satanism, if you can accept that. Their idea is the human will is the most important, whereas if you invert it, it's our Father in Christian things is do God's will, right? So you can have this kind of duality, and you can see it actually. They're very stark, obvious similarities between Crowley's philosophical outlook and Adolf Hitler, actually, whose triumph of the will, and he believed in the primacy of his will to achieve what he wanted. So you can see that overlap. And actually, Crowley was in the Weimar Republic. So right as Hitler was coming to power, Crowley was in Berlin at that time.
Interesting. And it's just, he's just the lead. He's like one of the lead trust fund dorks, along with Rockefeller and Flagler and all these other guys that help set up this generation of, these people that are running the show. And
Generation of Swine is really accurate, I think. But he was one of them, just like you say, a trust fund dork. His parents were actually very hardworking Christians who supplied kind of beer and goods to the pub system, the pub network, which is very vibrant in the UK. So they accrued a lot of wealth. They were very wealthy. They were able to send Crowley to what were considered to be the best schools at the time. And upon their, passing away, he was worth something incredible, like 20 million pounds, like at that time. Like, it's just an extraordinary amount of money. And he blew it all. He blew it away. Like, by the time he was 55, he had no money. He had no concept of money or work. He literally spent his whole time working, doing this perfidious, evil, occult stuff. That was really his kind of like calling, I guess.
Right. And that was pretty much from traveling and doing all the things that he did, to
mountain climbing, traveling, never working. So he had no compunction of real work, like a 9-to-5 job. So a lot of these other trust fund dorks you talk about, they don't relate to human beings on that level of like a guy contributing to society. They're really blood-sucking ticks or leeches on society who never really contribute. And Crowley was like that. I mean, I think he was what he contributed to the world is just monstrous, but it's there, and people reference it. So it's important. It's important to understand.
My sister was at the christening of this aircraft carrier. She was in the Navy, along with my grandpa, who is one of the best test pilots that the Navy ever had. He was a Golden Eagle. He flew 60 missions in Vietnam and 60 missions in Korea. And, I idolized him as a kid. And one of the reasons I'm a fighter is because I found my own thing that, I could try to be great at, because I knew I would never be a pilot. And he was like, John, it's okay that you're afraid to fly. I tried boxing once, so he was letting me know that we all have our thing. But it's so interesting because have you ever heard the interview with Kay Griggs?
Yes.
Okay. So I listened to that whole 7-hour thing a couple years ago, and I remember an argument that my grandma and grandpa got into in the Florida Keys where she said something about the officers club, and that really tied something in for me, a memory as a kid, because um I remember that was the first time I ever seen my grandpa look at my grandma sternly, and he said, "Sybil, not another word." Right? So, uh, you're muted.
Sorry. I'm talking to my wife.
Oh, okay.
I was listening. Right. So Kate
Oh, okay.
Griggs and all that stuff. I'm
Sorry,
with you. I
I'm
got my
still getting the
earbuds.
hang of, all this stuff. Sorry about that. So
It's okay.
yeah, so that tied in a lot of things for me personally, because it was like I remember having this conversation with my grandpa at the end of his life, and he's like, "Do you think God's going to forgive me for everything that I've done?" And I go, "I think so. I think he will." He goes, "I hope so." And it's just, you could tell that he, at the very end, he was tormented at whatever he went through to become one of the top people in the Navy, right? And this 77, I can't get away from it. I was in here doing my research, and I said, Lord, I'm not looking at another 77 tonight. I'm going to go out and watch Roadhouse, which was supposedly, the setting is the Florida Keys. And it had Conor McGregor in it. So I was interested in seeing the new rendition. And what's the only mile marker that Jake Gyllenhaal walks by is a 77. I pause it. I take a picture. I look at my wife, and she goes, "What the fuck is going on?" And I just said, to me, that's the Lord answering my prayer, kind of like, I'm done with this. Like, I'm not doing it again at tonight. I'm done with this book. I'm done, with this whole thing tonight. And he was letting me know that, you don't decide anything, right? I decide. Right. And so that was very I mean, it doesn't take much to humble me, but I'm perpetually in a state of gratitude and gratefulness my whole life, even before I woke up to what these, trust fund dorks were doing to me. I always had that in my pocket, being grateful, even when I was pretty agnostic. So, I gotta say, all of this really hits close to home. And when I heard you talking about Cullen on the
Yeah.
most
Cullen
recent,
Finnerty.
yeah, I played football against Cullen Finnerty when I was for the Walled Lake Braves, and he was a Brighton Bulldog, and we were in 9th grade. And yeah, and so I live in Brighton now. I didn't go to high school here. I went to Walled Lake Western, but I know his story, and obviously I played football with him, and I knew everything that happened was really weird. And I remember hearing that he said that he was being followed by two men, right? So then when I heard you say that in the podcast with Sam, it was just like the 77 to me. It was just like I was meant to hear you talk about that, and we were meant to have this conversation about what went on with Cullen Finnerty.
Right. He was the greatest Class B or Level B college player in history. I think he won 2 national champions back to back. Right. So he was
Yeah,
a great athlete.
and Grand Rapids is where he went to school, which is Grand Valley State, and it was Division 3, if you want to
Division
be
3. Sorry. Okay. Sorry.
right. Yeah, Division 3, and yeah, he was good at Brighton, but he really excelled, at that college level, and didn't he marry into the vitamin family, right? I believe, or something.
I know he was married. I don't know his familial story.
I
Um,
believe that the girl, and forgive me, everyone, if I'm misspeaking, but this is, hearsay. It's the rumor was around that I've heard from people that have lived in Brighton is that he married into a rich family and they
hmm.
were into vitamins or something. Now, this is just me hearing rumors around town. Like I haven't substantiated this, and I was just talking about it a couple days ago with people who take my 6 a.m. class. So, I just wanted to bring that up. But what is the very obscure and odd details that you found with his case that lead into this smiley face, killer, ritual phenomenon that you've been tracking?
Well, he was a good athlete, young, fairly young guy. I think he middle aged. He went out fishing kind of in West Michigan, and he said he was being followed, and then he disappeared. This is kind of like the classic SFK, like somebody disappears. People, there's a huge search. You can watch the search online. All the references to the search for Cullen Finnerty are still out there, and friends and family. And then, like 3 days later, he's found in a previously searched area, face down. Like he's in a very strange thing, not in water like some of the other SFK cases, but the fact that he materialized in kind of an open area, like he wasn't like hiding behind a tree or something. But I think they assumed there was a autopsy and he had water in his lungs, very strange that he shouldn't have. So he might have been in water before being placed in this weird area. And there's actually, I think, a documentary about him. I think ESPN did it. And just the mystery around it. Well, one of the strange elements of the Cullen Finnerty case is that somebody I know in Europe decided to hire a basically, one of these guys who is a like not a psychic, but a
Remote
what are they?
viewer.
Remote viewer. Thank you. I was having trouble
Yeah,
with that word. A
remote
remote
viewer
viewer
where
in Europe who knew nothing about the case, right? So knew
right.
nothing about Cullen Finnerty. And the remote viewing has a kind of scientific element to it. I mean, you can take it for granted, well, whatever you want, but basically, you're supposed to have a completely not unknown person do it, like who doesn't know the facts of the case. And this person said that Cullen Finnerty was abducted and he was moved around. And this is consistent with the reports about Finnerty, is that his cell phone pinged at different while he disappeared. His cell phone pinged at different towers in that kind of general vicinity. So this remote viewer in Europe said that he was taken to multiple places. And what he said, and this is included, I have a full chapter on Finnerty in my new book. But what he said is that Finnerty was taken somewhere. There were multiple people. He was kept in a contained environment. And it seemed like water was put on his face, almost like he was waterboarded, was almost like what this guy was saying happened to Finnerty. So that seems to be consistent with what they, with kind of the smiley face killer assumed MO, is that people are taken somewhere and horrible things happen to him. So I think that's what happened to Finnerty. And I think the remote viewing is consistent with what people knew about that case. It's very strange. Like a healthy guy, he had CTE, like he had some kind of low level brain damage, I guess from playing too much football. But yeah, so I think that the remote viewer is onto something.
Well, I mean, I could tell you that, I have CTE, we all get, small concussions when you're sparring. And, I don't, I think a lot of those cases also, the concept of CTE, the way they tell us, and then all of these famous people are killing themselves. And, I don't necessarily believe those stories anymore either, and I definitely, after hearing the details of Cullen's, story, just being around here when it happened, it sounded very weird. And the fact that it ties into what you've been researching is absolutely nuts. It's
Yeah, and there's other
absolutely nuts.
cases there. Yeah, there's other cases there in Western Michigan too. There's a Todd Guide case, is a very well-known case. There was another man. There's bodies found in Lake Michigan. So there's some sketchy stuff that happens in that area. There's a huge, like either a national or state park there that comprises a pretty sizable part of Western Michigan.
There was a doctor a couple years ago. I think it was in Jackson, and he was younger than my wife, who's 35. Um, he had two kids. I think he was like 32, and he drowned in his own pond. Did you hear about that one at all?
I don't know what I'd have to look at his name. I mean, in my book, I have cases with states on them. But when
Okay.
it's very suspicious when you get found in a pond. I'm very suspicious of like overdoses in Hollywood too. They're probably been given a
Oh,
hot fix. So I mean, I think people knew this MO, the Smiley Face Killer's MO, where you intentionally leave bodies in water to confuse police and get rid of evidence. And hopefully, like if you're a sophisticated killer, like you want people to think that it's an accidental drowning. So I don't know. I'd have to look at that case, but some of these cases are clearly misadventure at the least.
and it's got to be a network of people. It has to be a team or some sort of, like ninja enforcement of the trust fund dorks.
Right. Yeah, I
Because
think so. I
it's
think
all
it's
going
just
on everywhere all the time.
I think it's just a strain. There's like subcultures, there's like furry subcultures, there's BDSM subcultures, and people meet up with those. I mean, I know a guy who still plays that weird football game where it's electric and they move across the thing like it's from the 80s, and they have a subculture online of guys who also play that game. Like it's a real or
Yeah.
D&D or Magic the Gathering. But I think that there's a subculture of people who are attracted to men and are nefarious, and I think that that's something happened with this kind of software, or the concept of the MO went out and people are emulating it and doing it, and that's what I think. And they might be communicating. I don't know. I know Gannon said they are communicating back when he was doing his research. So it's really something like the FBI and the Interpol or these big agencies should be looking into. And I think they might be to a certain extent, but they certainly aren't putting out a warning or anything. I think it's easier for them to just ignore it. And that's kind of like the society that we're in now anyway. People don't care about each other, and they would never like proactively warn people to be careful. And that's disgrace, really.
Yeah. I mean, I try to help people as much as possible. I give, what can we do is like give bigger tips to people that need it. We, help hold the door open for an old lady who's walking up, like we do little things like that. That's all you could do. Treat people how you want to be treated. I think that is, the main thing that a lot of people are missing these days. I absolutely agree with you. And it is a disgrace to humanity. And they've all bought into this type of behavior, which has been presented to them by these trust fund dorks. So real quick, let's go over these slides, and instead of me talking about 77 from my point of view to all my friends, I'm going to let you kind of explain this little sideshow that you've created. And, you can tell people about how it's impossible for 77 to show up like it does at every single freaking event like it does. And I mean, it's a worship.
Yeah, I think so. I think you do. I think that like in any religion, you have numbers that are important, dates, right? So Judaism has all kinds of important high holy days. Islam has Eid and what's the fasting month or whatever. So Christianity has that. Yeah, thank you, Ramadan. So I think that these guys have their own kind of worldview, and these are their expressions of this numerology. I think are all over 9/11. And once you kind of see it, like you said, once you or open your eyes to it, you can't not unsee it. Like you just see it 77s everywhere. So this is George Bush, freedom at work. 77 was the plane that hit the Pentagon in 9/11, by the way. The pen, you have a whole slide. We'll show your slide.
And like you can see everyone that there's no plane parts anywhere. And that's why I try to refer to it as missile 77, so that people can really kind of like get the concept of, look, it doesn't even need to be a plane as long as you believe it. As long as you believe it was. Right. So here's a little bit
the
of
77,
11.
Those are all the numerology of the flights. 11,
And 8:20 to 9:37, people. How much is that? 8:20 to 9:37. That's 77 minutes. You know, I mean, it's impossible, you know, and to build. Yeah, we'll go to the other slide.
Yeah, it's not unintentional. It just shows all the flights. 93 is Crowley's.
Oh, I see. Gotcha. Yeah,
93 is Do What Thou Will. It's basically the gematria for agape and thelema. So
right, and sometimes to give you a couple other famous 93s, you've got the sun is 93 million miles away. The ISS goes around the Earth in 93 minutes. There's quite a few, and it's totally obvious that it's another 77 type thing, another 666. Here's the Baphomet hat with the 77.
Right. So
is that what this is? Is that the Baphomet right there? Or no?
I think so. It's a goat. It's some kind of secret society thing. I think it's the Shriners. I think it's a Shriners cap. That's my understanding.
Which is the Shriners are pretty much the not the Freemasons, but who are
something else? Yeah, some other.
Who are the people that protected the Grail? The I can't think of
Knights
it right
of Malta
now.
Or the
Templars. Yeah, the Templars. Yeah, they worship the Baphomet. So then, if this is the Shriner, you know, that makes sense. And there's
Bush with the same hat.
Right? Yeah, so the sun, so the father, the son. Trust fund, dork, activity.
This is the the London bombing of 7/7, right? This was July 7th, 2005, right? Terrorist bomb, so-called terrorist bombing.
On 7/7.
Right. And who was there? Bloody Benjamin Netanyahu was literally at the Mayfair Hotel. Like, it's the synchronicities are hard to believe. Like,
no way.
Yeah, Netanyahu was on site. It'll see it on the next slide.
He was on site.
Yeah.
After the London bombing, Benjamin Netanyahu returned to Israel on the 7th. 33 days, people. There it is right there. There's a 33. They're giving you the shout out. They can't help themselves. Unbelievable.
However, for Benjamin Netanyahu to continue his political career, he had to overcome the major gaffe he made in London on the 7th of July, 2005, when he stated that he had been warned in regard to the London bombing.
Wow. So he even he's even telling you that he got a heads up.
He probably, that's why, this is a long article, but you can read from it. But yeah, he's, there's a B'nai B'rith is basically Jewish masonry, so a lot of these guys. This is at the intro, Natural Born Killers. What's his name? Oliver Stone knows so much about the occult. It's pretty impressive. I'm actually impressed. But there's tons of smiley faces in Natural Born Killers. Plus, at the intro, if you go to the next slide, 77 Sunset Strip. It's right there at the beginning. If you remember the intro scene, they walk into a diner and blow everybody away. And this
is so funny because I told my boss to listen to this episode when he comes out. You're going to want to listen to it. And he's the one that when I was telling him about all the 77s, and he's like, well, what about 77 Sunset Strip? So it's so funny that it
goes back, and that might be why it's 77 Sunset Strip.
Is this in Natural Born Killers?
Correct. It's right at the beginning.
Oh, okay.
You can actually pull up the YouTube intro sequence, because once it's like once you see it, you see it. But if you watch the other one, he did World Trade Center, a film called World Trade Center. And there's numerology all through that as well. 93, 77, 11.
Right. Really, what is this?
This is just a 777 is kind of a corollary to 77 in Crowley's system. But this is like a Crowleyan witch right there. She's known as Marjorie Cameron. And this guy's an occultist. Dennis Hopper's all into the occult. And they were in a movie together called The Night Tide. And that's what this is from.
Isn't Marjorie Cameron supposedly who was manifested by Jack Parsons and L. Ron Hubbard in doing the ritual in the desert?
Yeah, that's her.
Wow. So what is allegedly that actually happened with that? Like this being manifested out of nothing?
Well, she came into Parsons' life, so that was kind of like what he said was
Oh, I
the
see.
answer to his ritual.
I see. I see. I
And then
see.
they kind
Right.
of became. I mean, she has red hair, kind of became a Scarlet Woman, like Crowley had Scarlet Women as
And
well.
Crowley mentions that this, when it's a 777, it's this demon called Corazon or something like that.
Yeah, he had a Bleeber 77, which is like a chronology of world religions and the similarities, but also 77.7 references in the Kabbalah the energy that goes down through the center of the Kabbalah when it goes through the numbers. It manifests almost as a lightning bolt, and so 777 on top of each other is that kind of lightning that starts from, I think, the
Oh,
top
wow.
emanation down to the bottom. Yeah, so
And as you read, the Secret Teaching of All Ages by Manly P. Hall, there's, he's reciting all the sevens everywhere in every single, place on earth where they're all worshiping sevens. It's everywhere. What do we
there's
got? Michael Jackson
Jackson
here.
777.
Where?
It's just on the right hand side of his shirt. It's like big sevens, like from Vegas, right? And the masks and stuff.
Oh, wow. It sure is right here. I see it.
Yeah.
Huh.
This is the 77 London bombings. This is the memorial they had in 2009. It looks kind of like the Twin Towers. It's weird. But
Yeah. Why would you build a memorial like that? That's so weird. I wonder how many of these things there are. Is there a lot more of them than this picture, or is that pretty
I
much the
don't
whole
know.
thing?
This is the first time I've seen it. I don't
That'd
know.
be interesting to count them if there was. Oh no, it's 52 single columns. Oh, I see. I should have just read a little bit more. Next, 7/7 anniversary. You got a lot of London bombing stuff in here. Was there more 77s in that event,
I
or?
don't remember. There was something suspicious about the bus that blew up, but these are your slides too that you sent me, so I included them on this.
Right, I appreciate that.
Hawk
And
scar.
so look, people, if after Pearl Harbor and 11/77 sailors died on the Arizona, the 77th Congress started, pretty much declared war with Public Act 77. And this plane right here pretty much ended the war when it dropped the bomb on Nagasaki. And what did they have painted on it? Of course, they can't help themselves. Here's the one that I made for the Norwegian shooting where the guy went on pretty much the elite camp and, shot
Breivik.
Yeah. And he shot
Anders Breivik.
77. Now, here's one that really blew my mind. I had no idea. I mean, it was already cemented for me with just 9/11 alone, because it'd be impossible for all those 77s to line up in construction, because I'm into construction. You built the Pentagon 77 feet high. You built it 70, let's go with that
And you
one.
struck
70,
ground. Do you know when they struck ground on the Pentagon?
9/11, 1941, right?
Correct.
So
Very good. Very
exactly
good.
60 years, the 77th Congress was the Congress who struck ground. So the
Wow.
77th Congress struck ground 9/11, 1941, and they built it 77 feet tall with 77 55 windows on the 77th parallel. Now, now that's very believable. I can believe all of that was done on purpose. But don't expect me to believe that all of a sudden, by chance, American Airlines Flight 77, which was in the air for 77 minutes, hit this Pentagon, right? And then the 77th floor was hit by American Airlines Flight 11 at the World Trade Center. How many victims? 2977 victims. We don't even know if the hijackers were real, so you can't count them, and they're definitely not victims. You have to go by victims, and I've seen that other number thrown around where they try to add the hijackers to mess with the actual number of what the victims are. And then how many firefighters or first responders? 7 times 7 times 7 is 343. So, I mean, folks, it's impossible just with 9/11 alone. and I actually don't have the doomsday plane on here, which I fixed, which was Venus 77, and Venus is symbolized by a 7-sided star. So let's go back to Oklahoma City. Now, William, please explain to the audience, after I just did 9/11, explain to them how Oklahoma City is literally the same thing, just 77 months before.
Wow, it's crazy. It's all by design. I mean, that shows that these are all kind of events placed on certain dates for reasons that the average person doesn't understand.
Yeah, I mean, a 77-page report. The Murray Building was built on 1977. Timothy McVeigh escaped in a 77 Ford Mercury.
Wow.
Terry Nichols was arrested with a cache of 77 guns, which you have to find the court document to actually get the right number.
Wow.
The ATF claims that the aluminum powder they used increased the power by 77%. In the
Wow.
77-page report, you'll find 77 victims identified by DNA. You have to add up the dental and the DNA, and then it comes out to 77. And then McVeigh was arrested exactly 77 minutes after the bombing. I mean, folks, and in Oklahoma City is right on Route 77. Obviously, that's what this is right here. So it's impossible. I always include a little like hidden like Easter egg of Crowley somewhere in these posters, because he's one that really perpetrated, I think, helped perpetrate all this stuff. Let's go on to the next one. We got Waco, right? Waco on 77, Route 77. And when the ATF got done burning Waco to the ground, which is on the same date as Oklahoma City, by the way, which is
Right, it was
apparently,
intentional, right? That was the thing. That's what McVeigh supposedly did, was to avenge Waco, right?
oh yeah, and that makes sense that they would be on the same date. But we got right here, you have to search really hard for the actual, because it kept saying 76 deaths. 76 deaths. I'm like, that's way too close. And then I found the article that was by William Booth, April 29th, 1993. And I posted it right here. The grim death toll and the fiery demise of the Branch Davidians comprised here rose to 77 today. So someone died the next day, allegedly, which brought it up to our number. So we got 77, Route 77, 77 acres left, and 77 deaths. I mean, come on, folks. Do you still believe that what they're telling you on the news is real? Now, this is the thing that scared me the most, William. And when I saw this, I actually sat up in my chair like some demon was talking to me. Like he's like, "Oh, you found me. You found me." This one scared me the most. Out of all of them, out of all the ones, this one scared me the most, because I remember thinking to myself, why are the police holding? I have 4 kids. Why are the police holding these fucking parents back right now and listening to gunshots? This makes
Right.
no sense. This can't be happening. This makes no sense. Like, and anybody that's anybody with a heart and a mind would say this makes no sense. And so what prompted me to search this one as I was going through my 77s was I saw a video on X where all these cops were coming out of Uvalde and they were throwing up. Right. And I was like, ooh, Uvalde, I haven't looked at that one. And right away, the gunman was left unchallenged for 77 minutes. And that's in every single paper. Every
Wow.
single
Wow.
paper.
I didn't know that.
Right. And so then I show this to my friends and they're starting to catch on. A girl that trains with me who's completely in a bubble, she sends me, look what I found. And it was the 77-page report. And I go, shut the fuck up. Are you kidding me? And it's like, come on, folks. Like, how many of these things do we have to go through?
Right.
Right.
This is your list that you sent to me. I don't know if you want to go through this or not, but
Yeah, we
it
went
is
through a lot of them
interesting that,
already.
yeah, that McVeigh is driving a Mercury, because Mercury is the messenger of the gods, right? So he's like a messenger of the satanic gods, like we spoke about earlier, right?
Right. And also in
Legion of
alchemy,
Hell.
Mercury is the destroyer. so it also serves this, as you say, multiple purposes for, what these guys are into. Now, folks, just real quick, we'll go over this real fast. We've already done a lot of them, and I can see which ones we've done. But, when Flight 77 hit the Pentagon, that was 577 minutes into the day. There's another one. Venus 77 was the doomsday plane. George Bush was 77 years old on 9/11, the older one. And he was also appointed to the CIA in 1977. The most recent one was that bridge that just got hit in Baltimore, opened in 1977. Right.
Gotcha. Wow, right.
So it's nonstop. The Georgia Guidestones, which are right next to Route 77. Look at all the things that happened next to Route 77. Waco, Oklahoma City, the JFK assassination. The Georgia Guidestones are right next to Route 77, which they're erected right next to, get this, the 777 farm, which was built on 3/22, the day of Skull and Bones. Obviously, you're aware of that. There's Anton LaVey's 77 Infernal Names. John McCain was rescued by Navy Task Force 77.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Gabby Gifford shooting happened on Arizona Highway 77, and Jared Loeffner had a 33 bullet magazine. They for sure make sure they tell you that. Kobe Bryant's daughter was Gigi 77. JFK, back of his license plate when he died on Route 77 was also GG, which is 77. The Malaysia flight that disappeared. Now, I included this, but all the Boeings are Boeing 777. So, you can't really count that. Leonard Skinner plane crash was in 1977. There's a lot of things that happened on 1977. So I didn't include everything like that. But here's a weird one. The H resolution, House Joint Resolution 77, is what sent troops to Iraq by George Bush. House Joint Resolution 77. Now, a more recent one I found that's not on this list, William, is the Iraqi freedom. The vote that approved it was approved with a vote of 77-22.
Wow. Crazy.
I know, they can't help themselves. Oswald shot from 7 floors and which had 7 windows. Dylan Roof was he was that Atlanta church shooter. He was indicted on 7/7, and the newspapers make sure they tell you he shot 77 shots over and over again. They make sure they tell you that.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yep. The 1984 San Yadiro McDonald's massacre, which also has a documentary called 77 Minutes, the assault lasted 77 minutes. Robin Williams' post-life doc called Robin's Wish had a running time of 77 minutes. I got multiple reports on this. William, could you think maybe you could help me with this one? How many Japanese aircraft, did they say hit Pearl Harbor? I read initially it was 177, and then I've read so many different things, and I don't even know what the narrative is on this anymore.
I don't know either. Nothing surprises me these days.
Yeah. And so you have Jonestown, where Jim Jones, had everyone drink his Kool-Aid, which is the coordinates are 7.7. Japanese Airlines Flight 123, which is the worst airlines flight ever. The captain was 49. That's 7 sevens, and also the Columbine shooting, 49 victims. The Pulse shooting, 49 victims, so that those are 2 7/7s, with the way they have it. So, come on, folks. It's impossible for all of this stuff to. That was the slideshow, right? All of them.
I think that's it. Yeah, but I also have a video if you can play that. Can you upload that video? Okay. Hopefully it'll play.
You got all of those right?
Do you have the audio?
Every single one of them?
I have audio. Yeah, I can hear it.
That's great.
You hungry?
Sort of.
When we did 7?
Ooh, 7. Listen.
And real quick, folks, this is if you don't know, this is Eyes Wide Shut, Stanley Kubrick's last film, which has a lot of occult stuff in it, and
Can we
so
make it
we'll
a
let
little
that play.
earlier because I have.
You can just play it again. He's
Oh.
having
Got
fun.
all of those right?
Yeah.
Every single one of them? That's good.
You hungry?
Sort of.
When we did 7?
Ooh, 7. Listen, can we make that a little earlier because I have.
Oh, I see. So there was a. She's like, "You want to do 7?" He's like, 7. Ooh.
77. It's right there. Yeah, they're
Right.
having
Yeah.
fun.
So
Yeah.
yeah, they're having fun with you folks, and that's what they do. Just like in the movie The Patriot, he weighs the chair in the beginning, and this is a little bit, a few months before 9/11, and he weighs it, and he says 9 pounds, 11 ounces,
That's
and
right. Yeah.
and then he sits in it, and it falls into itself. It falls into itself. Remember, so they're very clever. They're having fun with it.
Yeah.
Reality is not what you guys think. I promise you. William, you're the man. I can't wait to get your books. Any lasting thoughts that you want to leave with everyone? I really hope to do this with you again. I know that we probably don't have that much time today because we're both really busy, but I'd like to reschedule this with you and do another
Sure, anytime.
episode.
Anytime.
Yeah, and after I read your books and get a little bit more in depth with everything that you've researched personally, I'm very well aware of all your research in your books. I've heard you on probably 20 podcasts. I've heard you talk, right? So I'm very aware of everything that you've got going on. But I haven't had the pleasure of reading your books. That's why when we scheduled this, I bought 2 of them right away, and I can't wait to get them. And the ones that I bought everyone was the Smiley Face one, so I could read the whole chapter about Cullen Finnerty, and also an Aleister Crowley one, because in my opinion, he's the trust fund dork that these guys are shouting out the most.
Yeah, he might be the ultimate trust fund dork of all time, or at least in the top 10 global worldwide trust fund dorks who just didn't contribute anything positive. That's why I call him a prophet of evil. Like, he wanted to have the society we're in now. Like, it's just like, whoa, you really want to manifest that in the world? So, but yeah, my podcast is there. I've done a lot of different podcasts. You said heard me on 20. It's like sometimes it's hard to remember. I've done so many as a guest and a lot as a host. So you can find that at William Ramsey Investigates to see all the stuff that I've covered. I've done a 4-hour breakdown of Eyes Wide Shut with Sean McCann, of Wake the Dead. So that's, if you want to see more of the occult stuff, like Kubrick was a really smart guy, but he knew a lot about esotericism. And then like you said, books, I've got 5 books and then 5 documentaries, which you can watch for free on my Patreon. You just have to go to Patreon. You can pay $5 a month and you can watch, if you're more of like a visual learner, you can watch documentaries on Smiley Face Killers, Children of the Beast, Prophet of Evil, and then I have an occult Hollywood kind of, which is where I saw a lot of this numerology and stuff that, maybe some people haven't seen. So you can check that out on Patreon.
So I'm a guy in the street, William, with this little last hypothetical. I'm a guy in the street. I walk up to you and I go, "Who are you going to vote for?" What's your answer?
I'm going to vote for somebody in the third party to see if my vote counts. I mean, I think that I'd say it with a chuckle, though. I'd say the change that you want to manifest in the world probably isn't going to be manifested by going and throwing your vote into a black electronic black box. I mean, the only reason they're using the electronic voting systems is to cheat. That's really it.
If you could give anybody some advice, last minute advice real quick about what they could do to wake up and, where do they start?
That's a good question. I think that the kind of alternate media is doing a good job of kind of contradicting a lot of these fake stories that we've had, these literal kind of fables or myths about so many critical events in American and world history. So, I mean, I think I do a pretty good job. You could listen to Tinfoil Hat. Sam does a lot of different types of shows too, asking questions and doing research. So I definitely put him up there. some other people. There's a lot of guys on Rockfin and my network who I would listen to. Isaac Weishaupt, Jay Dyer. I mean, Alex Jones, I guess, to a certain extent. And just kind of, you can kind of, I think, actually, strangely, there's a lot of people have kind of left the old model. So, like, even Tucker Carlson's kind of morphed and is having, Joe Rogan, too. I mean, certain of his shows.
That was a crazy episode. I'm not going to lie. I mean, we've heard Tucker say the word Nephilim. We've heard him say spiritual
UFOs.
We've
like, he's
heard
starting to ape this kind of larger. At least they're asking questions and doing those shows. So,
do you ever think that this could be a clever revelation of the method by the Elite Trust Fund dorks? That, like Alex Jones, for example, it's like, I mean, they could have lopped that guy's head off so many times and they just didn't, while they got rid of other people. Do you think that they let certain people through because they serve as revelation of the method, and they can call him a kook, they can call him a conspiracy theorist, but in the end, the spiritual karma is off of them because they told you, they let a guy tell you every day since 1991 that we're doing rituals at Bohemian Grove and we're burning stuff, and everyone kept thinking that what we showed you on TV was true.
I think to a certain extent, I think a lot of the major media guys, like, that come out of nowhere, are clearly ops, or they're supported by wealthy people that you don't see. They're being puppeteered and they're inserted into the alternate media intentionally and supported and bullhorned, so to speak. Like this guy Lex Fridman's like came out of nowhere. Like he's got millions of shows. Like this guy's clearly an asset. So I mean, you kind of have to watch out. Like I think like Ben Shapiro's a total asset too. Like a total. He's trying to guide the right media into what he wants them to think.
Where are you on the Earth? Firmament or no firmament?
A globe in the middle of just a huge universe full of millions and millions of galaxies. Yeah, so it's almost incomprehensible how big the universe is. But they're obviously, I mean, we fly on an ellipse. We do not fly straight. So, although I've done 2 flat Earth shows, and that was enough for me. Like, he's just trying to tell me that you have to fly from South America to go north, then to cross over because of the map. And I'm just like, that's just complete baloney. You can take a flight straight from Chile to New Zealand. So you guys are lying to yourselves. Like, this is obviously provable fact. Like, you're flying on an ellipse.
Have you watched the Hibbler documentaries?
No. The other thing is that what you have to really ask people who believe in the flat Earth is ask them about other things. Don't just focus on the flat Earth, because some of these guys don't believe in anything. They have been so acid washed by reality. They don't even think that China. I talked to a guy, he would not confirm to me that China is full of Chinese people in the state of China. He didn't believe it. He believed in an ice shelf. He believed literally there's a 60-foot high, maybe it's 77 foot, but a 77-foot ice shelf that if you cross over it, there's a whole nother land. I mean, come on.
Right.
This is ridiculous. You have people transversing Antarctica and the North Pole and things like that. Like, these are ridiculous. The Earth moves on an ellipse as well. It's not on a kind of a straight thing. That's why we have seasons. So it's absurd.
When you read the Bible, are you like pretty like a stout Bible believer, or do you think
so?
Do you think
in as much as
really mess with it?
In as much as the Bible's been obviously tampered with, and it's been scribes have taken things out of it, I think that's pretty evident. And it depends on the translation, how honest is the translator. And it's obviously not just a pure historical document. There's poems and figures of speech that we don't even have now. So, but I do believe, I mean, I'm a total, Jesus is the Messiah. Jesus is a real person. He's not some kind of aggregate of, a bunch of gods from the old pagan world or anything like that. Like, it's fairly well evident that his followers influenced other followers who are historical figures, like people who were baptized by Peter. formerly Simon, and things like that. So the kind of Caesar's Messiah nonsense is easily discredited and totally disproved. And the nonsense that he was just some kind of fake person based upon the writings and the validity of the Holy Gospels. Really, the 4 Gospels are incredibly well written. They're so brilliant, like they're so unique, and just the teachings and the historical background of what happened during his lifetime are extraordinary. They're really, you have to read them again as just pieces of history and literature that are unparalleled. They're incredible.
What about aliens? Are they from outer space, interdimensional?
No. Interdimensional, yeah.
Interdimensional.
I mean the
Are they demons? Are they
well,
demons?
I don't know. I've maybe most of them, but I've talked to Charles Upton, and the phenomenon of the aliens happens to people who also can kind of perceive their dead mom and talk to fairies and stuff. So they have a very different imaginative scale, maybe that's closer to schizophrenia, but they're normal people, obviously. But they just, like, some people, like, the veil of different things are in their minds are different. And I think that's another thing where, like, you talk to flat earthers and ask them about what they believe. Talk to people who've seen UFOs and see what else they've seen, because they have vivid dreams. They, they're just those types of people. So I think that's an important component. But I think that some of you want to talk about a group where there's a lot of those stories are full of baloney and people are making money. That's one, and a lot of occultism too. But Charles Upton has studied the UFO phenomenon and thinks that they're the similar phenomenon to people, what they're experiencing is synonymous with what people used to call demonology, right? Fear, a shock, left in pain, confusion, that are very similar emotionally to, what people called demons in the 18th century. Yeah.
What about Bigfoot? Is it
Maybe that's interdimensional too. It's like, I think just like the Loch Ness Monster and Bigfoot, some of those videos are obviously fake. Like the original video, somebody put a dummy in the Loch Ness and created a fiction. So I think that some people are just vivid storytellers and they want the attention or create a public hoax. Those are the Amityville Horror was fake. Piltdown Man is fake. There's a good evidence that all dinosaurs are fake. Like, some of the stuff is freaking fake, and they're all created to validate either the theory of evolution, there is no God, their atheism. So they're always going to put these stories together to accentuate people's worldview, and they'll lie. So, or to make money, or to get women or something. Like, that's your standard cult leader, right?
just whatever, do what thou wilt, is,
if that's your worldview, if you're the most important person in the world and you don't care about anybody else and you're totally egocentric like Crowley or the trust fund dorks, right? Who cares if you create a lie or an elaborate fiction? Like, some of these things are just total nonsense. Like, give me a break. Like, why are we even talking about, flat Earth, or like, and then some of it becomes even more sinister.
I think that word itself, flat Earth, is definitely part of the psyop. I mean, you can just look at Mount Everest and it's 29,000 feet high, and the Marianas Trench is 30,000 feet deep. I mean, that's over a 60,000 foot difference. That's anything but flat, So I think that word itself is part of the psyop. But let me ask you this: do you believe that there's people on an ISS going around the Earth?
People on ISS? What's that?
The ISS, the International Space Station that NASA's showing. Do you believe that is real?
That's a good question. There's been some pretty decent evidence that there's blue screens or green screens.
It's all green screen. Yeah. That's what Hibbler's productions are all about.
Right. Okay. But even if that's fake, it doesn't mean the Earth is flat, right? So
no, I agree. I agree with you 100%. And I never, but it's interesting how.
Here's the thing: is if the Earth was flat, how would they circumnavigate the globe? Like, that means that all those people who did all the maps were fake, and there's no report of a 60-foot ice shelf, and nobody's enterprising enough to go to the 60-foot ice shelf, map it, and cross it. It would be the greatest story, the greatest adventure story in human history, is to find that we are in kind of like a Truman Show. It's
And I
ridiculous.
truly
It's
believe
totally
that's the
ridiculous.
case, because if
Right.
you watch the Hitler documentaries, just
No, man, no.
if you watch those documentaries, you'll see that people have tried and they get turned around by Navy ships. They've tried to fly with their own. He's like, we're making a documentary.
No, it's fake,
You can,
dude. It's just baloney. They're
well,
they're pulling your chain, dude. Give me a break.
I would give
The Earth is a
Hitler's
circle. It's a
documentaries.
circle. It's some. I don't know why gravity exists. Nobody. People know gravity is a force, but it doesn't make sense. Why does?
Well, it
gravity
could
really
also
exist?
be a globe that's just much bigger than they tell us, right? It could be a lot bigger than they tell us, you know?
Here's the thing: is that people on the southern hemisphere, right? Hemisphere are seeing a whole different group of stars. They see the Southern Cross, and people in the north, they see the Big Dipper. So how do you explain it? Is there like is it a flat earth and then there's people on both sides, one guy walking, and how do you explain that? I
It's
mean, these are elementary things, man.
it's
Yeah,
very
no.
interesting how in the Bible it talks about this firmament, right? It talks about the firmament, and then on Werner von Braun's gravestone, he has Psalms 19:1, which is, and let the firmament showeth his handiwork. And what the flat earthers would tell you, is like, I don't pretend to know. Like, I know they're lying about everything. That's all I know. So I don't really have a stake in it either way. But what I do is I look at all of the evidence, like everything that you've presented, everything other people have presented. I look at it all. I don't have any pride when it comes to finding humility, right? So, from what I've seen, there's a lot of fuckery going on with the ISS and space and NASA and what the Earth could be like. And it's just very interesting how Werner von Braun has that biblical shout out on his gravestone. It's almost like he was like admitting God won. I couldn't break through. I shot a million rockets at the firmament and I couldn't break through. It's an interesting little clue.
I mean, yeah, there is some. I mean, they didn't know this at the time of the moon fiasco, but it was this huge radiation belt that exists outside of the Earth, which would turn the average person into a piece of bacon. Like
Right.
the amount of
The
radiation.
Van Allen belt.
Allen belt, yeah. The microwaves are so strong they're almost incomprehensible. So there may be something to this thing, but these other, lunar landers and things like that, they may not be subject to it because they're not human, right? So the
Right.
Mars rover, I mean, yeah, there's lying about everything. So it's
hard to discern what could be true. I mean, it's almost impossible to know. We're always just, and that's why I try to explain to people, don't be scared. Life's an adventure again. You get to go out and freaking explore everything again and try to figure out, what it actually is. So thank you so much, William. I really appreciate it. You're the man. Everyone knows where to find you, and God bless, man. Appreciate it.
God bless you too, John. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Thanks, man.
I'm your huckleberry.
In the city of illusions where the dogs reside, with their trust funds and their daddy's pride, they play with power and they pull the strings, but they don't care about the chaos that it brings. They worship Moloch with their secret clubs. In the depths of their mansions, the high-rise hubs, conspiracy theories they keep spinning round, but they'll never know the truth that they found. Trust fund dorks and their Moloch worship, living in a world that's twisted and hip. They think they're in control with the just pawns, in a game they can see they're all just cards.